GM. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Man, I almost forgot what day it was of the week. Adam, how are you feeling today?
I'm realizing the dead internet theory is alive and well. That's what I've been contemplating over the last 4 or 5 days as I got hit with bots and spam. And I'm like, wow, this is amazing to see. I mean, people bought their own accounts on Twitter. That's obvious, and obvious across all platforms. Actually, I think it's a lot less on Twitter than on some other platforms. But it just hit me in the face again today, or maybe over the last couple of days. Like, holy cow, man, this is real. And I don't know maybe there is no solution to this, and maybe basically the AIs just run the internet going forward. And I don't know, man. We'll see how this all pans out. But I was hit with a little bit of this existential crisis thing over the weekend, so it was cool.
What's good?
Not much, man. Did you do anything this weekend?
No, had a chill weekend. Just the usual, church, the usual errands and shit. But I think Adam's right. Even on oh man, I'm gonna out myself, but I was watching Fox News. Ooh. Fox News. And they actually were talking about how 1/3 of the political accounts are mostly bots. And so if you think of in terms of the general sectors of the internet, there are a lot of them with heightened bot activity. And obviously us being in technology, the bot activity is heightened. Political has a lot of, value to the end users. It sways a lot of opinions. So there's a lot of bot activity there. And definitely in crypto, the users are so valuable that there's a ton of bots. So I think all of our followers are pretty much bots.
Well, that was the funny thing. Somebody hit me up too. Was like, "Hey, man, most of his followers are bots." I'm like, "Really? Of course." I mean, isn't everybody fucking got bot followers, bro? How could you not?
Well,
Has it gotten worse or better with Elon? Do you think? Last
I think
comment.
it's way better. I think it's way better for sure.
Or are they just better bots?
Well, that's possible too. 100%. Yep, 100%.
I would say it's better. I think Kaido for the crypto world made it a lot worse, to be honest, because now it's mostly just AI bots who are doing this content, right? So you're just getting flooded with it, and you can't even tell if it's bots or if they're like farming communities. But now I'm kind of just grouping them as one of the same, which is unfortunate because some of those are real people putting time and effort behind the content, but at this point I can't really tell, which sucks.
And it's such a merger too, right? I mean, we all know kind of legit people who obviously put out a crap ton of content, and a good portion of that is AI generated, right? So
facts.
Blurry
We're kind of
line,
bots, actually. The people themselves are almost bots at this stage. I haven't seen a send 2 ETH or send 1 ETH and I'll send you 2 back bot in a while. Most infamous of crypto. I miss those guys. I wonder what they're up to. But that's
that was the good days. But what's a way to get rid of bots in your community is a migration, right? We learned that through our own migration, that when you have to have humans put some physical labor by clicking 3 buttons and spend 10 seconds out of their day, you eliminate a lot of the automated personalities that are in your community. So, we're excited to have one of our fellow migrating teams and founders on stage, Dax, who got to have a few phone calls with already, building some cool and awesome stuff. So Dax, what's good, bro?
What's up? How's it going? Do you guys hear me all right? I just need to make sure my drivers are set.
Yep,
all good.
Yeah, can hear you, man.
Awesome.
Yeah, I saw you had your hand up earlier. Do you have a comment on the dead internet theory?
Yeah. Actually, believe it or not, my internship was at Twitter back in the day before Elon bought it. So I have a little bit of an opinion on that. Is that the bots are different? That specifically because I know the trust and safety team well back in the day when it was the trust and safety silo. They did really impressive things and really cool things that were maybe politically motivated and socially motivated, that were around maintaining integrity and trust on the platform. But that with the advance of AI and the fact that Elon has basically made Twitter a price gated platform, that the quality and effort into individual bots has gone up, because you're not going to post send me 1 ETH, I'll send you 2 back if it's going to cost you 5 credits to run every month. And so I think it's pushing tech to move faster.
Not all bots are created equal, as the digital overlords would say. Dax, well, I'm excited to have you here. Your project has gotten a lot of attention. I actually came across Monopoly Money, I think when you guys had first reached out like over a month ago, and then just kind of watched this ascension of not only the token price, but interest around this idea of private money on Solana, which is a very, I guess you would say currently a niche market, but overall privacy seems to be getting back into kind of the spotlight here as regulatory, as there's a market structure and regulatory certainty in the United States. But I'd love to hear a little bit about your backstory as somebody who is building private money. That means you definitely have to have some of the kind of cypherpunk ideals, which seems to kind of get lost a little bit in today's Solana meme coin craze.
Oh, it definitely does. I come across as very very cyberpunk, I think, to the modern meme coin community. I have a Linux tattoo, and it's a good day to die Klingon tattoo, and it's very much, I've always worn a mohawk. I've always been one of those punk rockers, and I got into the hacking space early. When I was, still in high school, I built a worm and a bot that ended up not only on my school, but at the local police precinct's cell network. So, hacking and building these kinds of tools and understanding where your data is going has always been important to me. And having the opportunity after the Navy to work in big tech and realize that, hey, it's really true. Any product that is free means that your data is the product. And what we do with that data, I came up kind of in this professional context of, especially as a web developer, well, if the platform it didn't exist, we wouldn't have this context. And your data person, individual user, is useless without the context and effort of all the code that I've put into this. And so that was a lot of the mentality professionally, but none of what I saw personally as, freedom, values, and what the importance of financial privacy is, and data privacy and sovereignty really is, come through in any of those meetings. And it was really disheartening and upsetting. And so when I got the opportunity to go from contract work and big banking, because after Twitter, I ended up at USAA, the bank. So I worked in traditional finance as well on the credit card team, building out, uh, you know, collateralized debt experiences. So fun. Um, exactly. You should snicker at that. Uh, I left and did some contract work for a while, but then ended up through that 2020, early 2022 boom of Ethereum, ending and hooking up with HTTP Junkie here on Twitter through spaces just like this. And I ended up as a contributor to their RAD team over at MetaMask, running RAD Replit application and development, going to conferences, being a DevRel, building demos. And I love that. I love the idea that regardless of who you are as a person, you can come into this space, learn it, make money, but also just take back that core privacy. The concept of financial privacy really, to me, crosses all political spectrums. For the right, it emphasizes limits on state power and due process and Fourth Amendment protections. For the left, it focuses on checking corporate power and curbing inequality, and even just the center. People just want a pragmatic, impenetrable privacy framework that it can balance innovation and consumer protections as well as rule of law. And so, to me, reclaiming your own privacy is kind of a no-brainer thing. But we have done what we did the first time around with your data. It's happening again with your finances. Is we're making it so easy with just simple button clicks to abstract away the fact that, yeah, your financial data and who you are as a person is immediately going into Coinbase, is immediately going to know your customer laws, and there's a huge database of exactly who's trading crypto where and what your addresses are. Absolutely, being held at centralized exchanges like Coinbase. And as much as I wouldn't wish us to go back to the really crappy user experience of the early days of Bitcoin, at least back in those days, you could, with confidence, trade with privacy and actually do things with your crypto without having to worry about what the rest of the meme coin community thought or what your boss thought if they checked out your wallet.
What do you take from the current state of like privacy coins? Obviously we see Monero kind of miners under attack, basically people attacking that the mining ecosystem to see, hey, maybe there's some weakness here in Monero, but just your overall view, you're probably more tuned in than we are to like the privacy coin space today.
Yeah. So I've actually been a longtime supporter of Grin Plus Plus. It's a very small altcoin. It does the Mimblewimble kind of protocol algorithm and ring circuits that Monero also uses. I just liked it because it seemed a little bit lighter weight and they had some good innovations on it. That being said, I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. I think from maybe a crypto bro kind of meme coin investment perspective, yeah, it sucks that we're going to have all this FUD. But essentially, what the Q team did, or Qubit, or whatever they are, I just think of them as the Q team, who built that incentive model to get people onto their software platform. I don't think it was an attack. It was a technical demonstration of reorganizing 6 blocks, and I think that distinction is important as we talk about it. But it's also a key part of the hacker ethos of what they did was a form of responsible disclosure of the fact that, hey, it's not just that we own 51% of the network. And this is something we even talked about where I just left my day job at Foundry. Foundry is one of the biggest Bitcoin mining operations in the world. They own 35% of the pool. And we've had serious corporate level conversations around, if we do physically own 51% of the hardware, what does that mean for us as a form of responsibility and ethics within the space? Do we ever even want to approach that number? And the Q team just blew past it and decided we want all the validator compute that we can get. And we need to retrain behaviors within the industry and show that it's not just a technical achievement. It was allowed because of social behaviors, because of social engineering, that we were able to do this, and that the safeguard isn't just protocol level of blocking centralized holding of validator or mining equipment. It's behavior as well, and I think that's a core thing of privacy. Is there are a lot of steps, and we're doing better, I think, as a global society, of protecting our privacy when it comes to using a VPN and our data and that kind of a thing. But we have not had the tools nor the language to talk about financial privacy in the same way. My grandfather was in banking for over 60 years. So I actually do know the rich people, tricky thing of build a trust, then have the trust own the company, and nobody will ever know where your money went, where your money came from, and you can have these legal protections and firewalls. But that's not something we teach in school, just like it's not taxes. So I think that financial literacy has a component to this, but that we just need more tools and tactile things and concepts that we can talk about when it comes to financial privacy. In the same way we can say, use a VPN, or if you really want to be private, switch to Linux and wipe your drive every 3 days. Even my MacBook, I have a startup Python script that rotates my physical MAC address every time I reboot it. And there are just simple. Yeah, I know. I'm crazy. I know.
You're crazy, bro. You're one of 5 people on earth who do that shit, bro.
Yeah.
But that's actually one thing I want. Well, I mean, I know this is a little off topic, but I'm going to be going on like a life in space, I think, tomorrow to talk about this, because I don't know if you saw it pop up. Like Dogecoin is considering moving away from proof of work. Like there's a group of Dogecoiners who are like, let's move to proof of stake, right? Proof of stake is we could call it an attack because basically the people who are pushing it are big time Dogecoin holders. They want to be able to get the staking rewards. But at the same time, it's like, well, we see what's happening with Qubit, that like there are these attack vectors. Do you think personally right now, do you think there needs to be some sort of like, I've heard like proof of work / proof of stake systems, one of these like combo systems? Is that what you're seeing right now as like the best possible solution for this sort of attack, or what's your kind of gut tell you?
My gut tells me that it's a combination of both. That while validators and moving to that kind of a system will do good things for decentralizing the network, especially when it comes to things, because like Solana, they even have a one-click AWS package. If you really wanted to, you can one-click on the Solana docs and spin up an entire AWS stack to run a validator node. And that's really, really cool and powerful for individuals who want to keep it decentralized, which I think is a good pattern to have. I think that moving to these other models essentially allows patterns of behavior that are easier to maintain decentralization, but it still relies on the community, on the core group of miners or validators, to be the ones enforcing behaviors and practices that are best for the ecosystem, because they are the leaders. They have the capital to buy these miners or to buy these validators and build these large systems. And so I think they need to be held accountable, for one, and two, they need to recognize that their behavior in the space is something that affects everybody.
So now you're on Solana, as we've seen a handful of different attempts at privacy focused, I guess you could say, applications like Tornado Cash, or even on the layer 1 level on things like Zcash. Where do you plan to make your imprint in the privacy focused world, and how does this technology differ that you're building with Zera Labs versus the things that currently exist today?
Right. So with Zera Labs, our cornerstone product is really this offline cash-like modality is what I want to push. The idea being that what I learned a lot at Twitter and MetaMask was that winners aren't picked by just good technology. If that was the case, Monero would have won. Uh, you know, but it became so heavy and so complicated to use that my end goal for our flagship set of products in the early term is this cash-like modality of being the Venmo or the tap to pay of the crypto space, especially when it comes to offline cash, and being able to shrink down attack and double spend vectors down to negligible percentages, where you would need to magically Star Trek clone two phones and then simultaneously spend them at the same time, kind of impossible levels of uh, double spend and those kinds of protections, which exist not just through conventional, secure hardware, but at the algorithm level and at the software implementation level. And it's been a super, super fun process poking and prodding my math side of my brain, right? Because I said I was in the Navy. So my original job in the Navy was actually ETN, electronics technician nuclear. So I worked on nuclear reactors. And so I've always loved physics. I've always loved math. And so at the start of the year, actually in Christmas of last year, I put up a blog post on my blog of what crypto should have been. And it was this vague idea that NFTs exist, zero knowledge proof exists, and we have this way to prove sovereign ownership of, assets. Why can't that asset be a representative of a unit of value on chain? And that kind of got me rolling into what zero knowledge proofs were and this kind of concept. And I realized, hey, University of Melbourne and a few other places allow for something called a PhD by publication, which means you can actually publish your research. And if it is a significant contribution to the field, they will invite you out to do a full thesis defense and give you a full PhD. And I'm like, yeah, that seems like something I can do here. I'm gonna give it a try. So sorry.
You're right.
Sorry, my screen totally locked. I was worried I got cut off there for a second. And so I started in this kind of rabbit hole, and I realized, oh my God, this is totally doable. You can use something fancy that I learned about called a Peterson commitment, and you can essentially lock value on chain in a mixer, just like Tornado Cash has been. This is off the shelf, done before kind of protocols. But the cool thing is with zero knowledge proofs, I don't need a second chain running nullifiers or holding a universal, set of transactions or anything like that. I can just prove that I held the value at some point and that I have spent the value or exchanged the value for a good of service without goods or services without actually showing, oh, this money went to this other person on chain. And just allowing for our version 1 to be a compliance ready mixer product that gives you that value note that you get to hold on to and spend. Like literally, you can hand it over to a person. I've even considered, because the proofs shrink down to a few kilobytes, I've thought of fitting it into fake dollar bills with QR codes on them that you could print out and hand physically to another person as if it was real cash as part of the demo. Because you can get the blocks of data that small. But that's kind of my core goal, is pushing this offline privacy cash modality, right? Because cash is king. We've always had that phrase that cash is king, and it has all these use cases where it's important to remain private. Sometimes it's good things, sometimes it's bad things, but I think it empowers a lot more people than it harms, especially when we talk about reasonable transaction sizes, and that from that core product, I'm also encountering, and Jake, you can probably attest to this, as you get into the space and you start building a company, especially around tokenomics and what have you, that you'll run into problems. And I'm already discovering privacy focused problems that we can be solving in our next generation of products, and things that I'm going to probably build in-house to maintain the privacy integrity of the company and the project. I can see turning around and turning into enterprise facing privacy products for other companies in the space. Things like privately managing your war chest, not just having a public address where everyone can take a look at, oh, well, why'd you spend 50K on this or 20K on that? Being able to actually use Solana 2022 tokens and their private transfers and that kind of stuff to maintain healthy privacy for businesses on chain is also something that I see us being able to do in the future.
So when you're attacking something like a privacy focused coin, are you looking to make it decentralized first and then expanding from there? Or are you coming at it first from, we need to make this, we need to obfuscate certain areas of the public facing, I guess you'd say, the transactions or different areas, and focus on the privacy first? Because there are a handful of privacy focused tools out there, but they are centralized under the hood, right? It's like it's decentralized to those who are viewing from the public, but those who are running the operations themselves have access to, all of the transaction history, which therefore doesn't really make it private, or it's like kind of centralized. So how are you looking at it in terms of ensuring that this is decentralized so that it is true privacy focused cash?
Yeah. So before we even get into that, my first thought process, and you can laugh, is that I need to make sure my math works and my code works before uh, we even plan for those engineering primitives. And that's what I've spent a lot of these last few months doing, is making sure the maths correctly, essentially. Uh, and it does, thank God. Otherwise, I wouldn't have released a demo. Um, But the cool thing is, with the math working the way it does, is I haven't necessarily had to make a decision like that yet. I've had to do it a little bit in these primitive demos, making sure I'm not overloading uh, the Solana contract compute and being able to split those up. But in the long run, the ability for the contract to only store a set of nullifiers, and then you present on chain zero knowledge commitments of the spends, means that we're not anywhere else except for on chain storing kilobytes, tiny kilobytes of proof and essentially counterproof. So it all remains on chain, entirely decentralized, and run by a single set of smart contracts. And that's kind of the end goal. Is I I want to do this so well that I can simplify and distill the core of privacy down to a set of primitives and contracts that can be replicated not just on a Solana, but across other chains as well. Because I don't know if I mentioned it, but my math work, my core foundational research on this is chain agnostic. Anything that supports a Turing complete compute set will be able to implement this kind of thing. That doesn't just mean Solana, that means Ethereum. That even means Visa and MasterCard could make it so that their credit cards work during a power outage, kind of a thing. And so picking Solana was kind of a no-brainer because of the transaction speed, low gas fees, and also Rust. Rust was a huge motivator for me because a lot of the mathematical primitives for this, like Rosetta curves, elliptical curve cryptography, quantum proof circuits for zero knowledge proofs already exist. Already have an abstracted base language like Circa, and they all run really, really well in the Rust ecosystem. And so to have those crates at my disposal, it made perfect sense for me to start on Solana as a proof of concept and as an ecosystem.
All right. So give me the smooth brain. Like, what is the project you're building? What's it going to do for me as a normal user, or what you hope it to do, in the coming months?
Yeah. So in the short term, the goal is to, one, give you a better user experience for privacy and making privacy your default option. Is that when you come to our ecosystem, which it will be an ecosystem, and we have a site and I'm rebuilding it all from scratch for a second time, is you come in with your token and with your USDC or your EuroC, and you go, I want to spend $100 or $200 privately. As you deposit that, you burn or deposit some of our token as well, as part of the ecosystem fee. And then you get what I call in my research cryptographic primitives. You physically get, and I want you to be able to hold and think about this. So our very first demo will be a download file. And this download file, it will contain what in my research I call the cryptographic primitives. Everything you need to do to take that $200, split it into, say, a $150 and $50 commitment, and split it into two more files, and then hand that $50 file to your friend. Then your friend comes back to our ecosystem, our website, or directly to our smart contract, uploads that file and the contract goes, yeah, all the math is valid here. Nobody did anything funky. Here's $50 directly from the mixer. And I've been able to prove, actually, as of last night, I ran a prolonged set of tests on a new version of the contract, and it worked great. There was zero linkage between the actual deposits and the off-chain recipients, and anyone could take part in it. And it was really exciting to be able to see that moment come to life. It was just nothing but code because I wrote everything, all my test scripts in TypeScript. But that's kind of the smooth brain approach over the next few weeks. Is you touch this, you feel this kind of file that you can put on a USB drive, that you can hand to a friend, that you can email, do whatever, and then we intend to essentially expand the security around that file, being able to embed it directly in secure compute areas within cell phones or computers, so that you're storing it safely, just like you store your wallet or your credit card information, and being able to do those operations in real time offline with your phone, with our own hardware wallet or with a hardware wallet integrator system, so that you can use it as if it was Venmo or what was it that Jack Dorsey just put out,
Right.
peer-to-peer, yeah, that kind of a thing. Get within 50 feet of someone and Bluetooth syncs up, and you can send that file over Bluetooth, type of a thing.
So is this for USDC mainly, or you thinking other tokens as well?
As we get it implemented and working properly, there is actually no limit to what we can accept as a deposit, right? It's a mixer. If you want to deposit meme coins and literally spend meme coins between you and another person, there obviously, because it's offline, there won't be live price updates or pegging it to a live price. But if you just want to say that the cost of a gumball is 25 Pepe coin, then you can ask someone for 25 Pepe coin and they can transfer to you in this way. And so we want to start with the stable coins, absolutely, of USDC, EuroC, Tether, and then moving on from there out to probably Solana directly as kind of the core primitive as well. So you can spend Solana directly, and then anything else that you want to be able to do. And I think that's the beauty of having a decentralized community as well, and having a token is we can look at it, we can issue a DAO-like vote to any holders to be like, hey, what coin do you want to implement next, while still being core and running a real business? You know what I mean?
So for someone like yourself who's kind of worked across the three main chains, you worked at Foundry, which is like the largest Bitcoin mining pool. You worked at MetaMask, right, which was the first kind of real web extension wallet. And then you've come to build on Solana. It sounds like the method underneath kind of sounds like the UTXO model itself, right? We were talking about this offline before. But now that you've experienced kind of all three areas, why do you think somebody has not even attempted something like this? Do you think it's the off-chain component, and where the majority of privacy-focused technologies have been just completely on-chain, or is there something else missing that has prevented anybody else from coming down this path of doing this on-chain, off-chain method?
Yeah, I don't even think we need to get that far. Is that the evolution of the privacy primitives that I'm using, the cryptographic primitives and the stuff from my research, is relatively new. Peterson commitments, I think, have only been properly researched and validated over the last half decade or so. And so even the core primitives, which I'm using, that I consider to be, battle tested, at least from a math and science standpoint. And this is why I always tell our holders, we're doing mad science over here. We're doing literal mad science. Is that they just haven't been implemented on chain. They haven't been used. Even Peterson commitments, a traditional mixer would benefit immensely from a set of Peterson commitments, or kind of the note structure system that I have set up and abstracted for it. And maybe there's a smarter way to do it, because my evolution process really came from the Ethereum. But we have NFTs and we have ways to mint discrete values, and those can probably be associated with some cryptographic thing, and it does an operation. And not being afraid to lean into more complicated topics like homomorphisms and abstract group theory, things that we know we can prove, but are hard to implement on chain. It's really hard to take the set of all numbers that is also not the set of all numbers of this thing or on this set of curves is a really complicated thing for even the most experienced engineers to get their head around. And it takes me days just to build, and Jake will laugh, it takes me days just to build a proper Rust structure for this stuff. Um, I am by no means the smartest person out here on this. And that's what surprised me the most is the lack of the fact that the privacy ecosystem and all the money that we do have in the space has not hired PhDs or as many PhDs as I would expect to see in a cryptography focused space. And so to kind of go back to your question though, I think the core of it is that people just haven't bothered to use the math tools that already exist out there for this. But also, the thing that makes, I think, us different is that I decided from the get-go that the best way to maintain privacy is not to send it over the network where, even if we had a perfectly working, Tornado Cash like mixer, that still when you connect to the internet, you're connecting through your router, you're connecting through all these different layers, and someone can absolutely see that you're calling an RPC node. And most RPC providers know that, know where you're coming from, unless you use a VPN. But even then, Jake, you probably know this, being a developer, like your header tells you exactly what kind of device is asking for this information or sending this information over the network. And so it was kind of, for me, kind of a non-starter of like, well, cash has always been king and has always been the best way for us to abstract a set of value and to exchange goods and services for value. And to do it in a way that low-key pisses off the government, but also is a way that we know works really well. One, because it does piss off the government, and two, because we've been using a cash-like system or cash modality since the ancient Egyptians. And we know for a fact that being able to hand someone something of value in exchange for goods or services is one of the best ways to maintain privacy. And so for me, it was kind of a non-starter of like, this Peterson commitment gives you this node, and I can take this node offline. I can do some math to it to split it into more values. Or even if we wanted to still do it on chain, you can take that Peterson commitment and break it into a bunch of $1 bills and save those nullifiers and the converse math statements on chain. And now you've got a fully set of freshly minted $1 bills as good as if they were from the US Treasury. And you can always come back to chain to redeem them. And so that being kind of the starting mental model of the project, to me, it always made sense to maintain that person to person. You can always turn off your phone or turn on airplane mode and go walk up to somebody who probably also has a smartphone and exchange a bunch of math conversations really quickly.
One question, and this is kind of like to the crypto natives, downloading a file is like, the biggest no-no in crypto. How do you plan to like combat that or make people feel safe with that?
Yeah. Well, that's going to be part of the demo, is that you're downloading files any way you look at it, honestly. When you make a request to a server, you're absolutely downloading content, and it's running in the secure context of your browser DOM. And there's nothing stopping us from, and that's part of my first demo, is doing all that math directly in the browser. And you have the option to essentially download that out of the browser context. So I'm building it all out of WASM and stuffing all the rest that I can into the client side, which will make it heavy, in our first few iterations. And I'm aware of that. But being able to just look at it and be like, oh, this is what the data structure looks like, and being able to point and click and explain, and you being able to go through the process of what the data is, I think will let people who are, here for that first generation of technology feel comfortable and confident in it. But as we move to an ecosystem, like I said, putting it on your phone and what have you, is it won't look like downloading a file. It'll still be, a buffer byte stream of data, however JavaScript sucks that in, or however Rust wants to suck that in. That still happens when you have a React Native app. That still happens every time you do a fetch request inside your mobile Phantom wallet, right? You're technically, in one way or another, downloading all the information from the RPC node. That's just JSON. Calling it a file, I guess, in this context is...
Yeah, I would drop that. I would drop that.
Yeah.
Call it an information.
We're putting the data in your hands.
Call it an information packet. So you grab it. Yeah. You grab an info packet. Are you thinking of packaging it as like putting it in some form of like app sort of style to make it
Exactly.
easy for people in that way? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that's part of my other mission is of the things that like I learned from Twitter and MetaMask is that we and I made a hot take the other day that browser wallets are the worst best solution at what they're doing. They're still limited by the fact that they're a browser extension and they're never going to be better than the best browser extension. But they don't enable the same kind of opportunities that native applications offer. And also with that, even when we move to mobile and React Native, we're still almost building with a browser context in mind, right? Because when you want to open Pump Fund or a Sushi Swap on your MetaMask wallet, what does it do? It pops up a native web view inside of the app that it can control, just like how with the browser extension or with Snaps, it talks directly to the browser context. So you still have to wrap the website essentially in your wallet, and you still have to expose your wallet to all that information. When that's never been needed in traditional banking, why not have it so that it's more like Venmo? You get that stream of data down to your phone that gets stored securely and saved, and immediately I have $50 of offline cash. And there's nothing stopping me from going to a crypto enabled payment processor or to my friend who also has the app and tapping to them, or even, uh, if things are decentralized enough, using these are one of the best guys in the space too. IRA.computer, IROH.computer. I don't show them enough, but they are some genius level mathematicians building some of the best decentralized peer-to-peer networking primitives that I have ever seen in my life, and they're wonderful. And I would love to use their set of crates for being able to do that peer-to-peer offline networking, or even online. If Jake, because I'm in Texas, Jake is somewhere else. But we still want to be able to do direct connections to each other. Uh, Putting that directly inside of the app ecosystem, a desktop wallet, a mobile app, and eventually a hardware wallet, I think makes perfect sense.
That it does. Let's dive a little bit now into the, you should say, speculative and tokenomic conversation, as this is how we ended up meeting. Is that you launched a token on Pump Fun many months ago, and as you had adopted and evolved your technology, it ended up capturing a lot more attention. I saw that the founder of Solana, Toli, was interacting with your guys' account and the technologies, and eventually you came to the decision that maybe this current tokenomic system is not going to allow you to grow Zera Labs to the scale that you want it to be. So I'd love to hear just a little bit of the story behind launching on Pump Fun, and then coming forward to today, where you'd realize that the current situation for your token is not going to allow you to build this privacy technology out.
Yeah. So another funny story is like I said at the beginning, I thought this was going to be my PhD by publication. It was going to take me 2 to 5 years just to figure out the math proofs, and I was going to do this alone in the basement. And I was between jobs at the moment, and I had just been listening to Jack Rhysider's Darknet Diaries and catching up on my hacking podcasts, and I just heard about all the Pump Fund drama and how they'd been hacked and the internal keys dilemma. And I was just like, this is fascinating, but it's Solana and it's cheap. And so I took my last $50 out of my budget, and I wasn't paying attention, and I had bridged my MetaMask wallet over to Phantom, and I, for shits and giggles, um, launched Monopoly Money. And everybody immediately kind of shit their pants and went, "Oh my God, it's the MetaMask dev. And what are you doing? What are you working on?" And I went, "Well, I wasn't planning on talking about this, releasing this, but this is my PhD thesis. Here's my first draft." And they went, "Holy shit balls!" And we hit the bonding curve within, the first 30 to 45 minutes, and then it just kept going from there. And I got a day job at Foundry, and everyone was like, "Well, why aren't you doing this full time? Why aren't you doing this full time? Why aren't you doing this full time?" And it finally, honestly, got to the point where the whales sat me down and went, "We'll put aside supply for you and figure out how to turn this into a company." And it got to a point with Foundry and with where I was at that I was just like, yeah, this makes sense for me now, and I feel comfortable and safe enough with the price and everything where it's at that like I can live for a year off the supply that I now have, and like let's go do this. And I sat down with Fitzy, who's I see in the audience, and Zardin, and they have been really good people who've been in the space for a long time. Have been like, here's the tools that exist. I know you've always been the engineer that's like, leave me alone. Don't get me involved in a project. Let me work on chain or work on a core technology like a wallet, which I still get to do, which that's the most exciting part of this company is that like, yes, it's a tokenomics-based project and I'm getting some of the best help I can from amazing co-founders like Jake and like Emblem, you know, that the community's already here to help a decent engineer like myself figure out how to navigate this kind of complex space and just allow me to focus on building the best products and technology that I want to build. And that's been kind of my guiding light is that I now get to wake up every morning and do something that I am personally, morally, and socially aligned with, which is providing the best possible privacy to anyone. And that you guys have just come along for the ride and supported me and pushing this token and the market cap and everything, honestly, to anything higher than I ever expected it to be. I expected this to be like my slow burn, 2 years after work side project, and it has become, you know, immediately my first job. And I just love it. And I want to thank you for having me here, but also thank you guys for your guidance and for the ecosystem tools that you're building that allow us to, you know, do this kind of migration and build trust with the community as well as, you know, fund the project.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And it is exciting to talk with builders who, like yourself, you know, want a second chance or a fresh start. And you have, you know, there's literally hundreds of different reasons why different team members and teams migrate, but generally it conforms around kind of similar ideas of, hey, we need funding. This current situation does not work. And so we need to migrate to a situation that best exhibits our wants and needs, whether that's something like LP rewards or rebranding or reclamation of some of the token treasury or put it into a DAO or whatever the kind of reason is. And the majority of teams who are migrating are individuals like yourself who want to continue the mission forward and they see this as a new opportunity. So you have taken this chance to rebrand to Zera Labs. Would you like to explain the meaning behind the name Zera Labs and also anything else towards the rebranding from Monopoly Money to Zera Labs? Did we lose him?
I think we lost him. You there, man?
Maybe you got a phone call or something.
I think he rugged. You back?
We'll give him a chance.
Yeah,
maybe
drop down and come back up, man. Close down the app, shut her down.
Chris, what you thought? Oh, go ahead, Adam.
I was just going to say, this is really interesting. I think it's actually, you know, getting people to kind of try it is the hard thing here, right? For me, though, with the ability to kind of like drop these things off, airdrops and all these sort of ability to it just feels actually ripe if you can do it with kind of any coin on Solana or meme coins or whatever, where if I want to do a giveaway or whatever, I can hook in with you know, DAX and just, you know, airdrop it to 1,000 people, right? Split up the meme coins in a bunch of, you know, wallets and then just airdrop them to people. I just think is a kind of an interesting opportunity. You back, man? Oh, he's lost. He's down again.
To be honest, it kind of reminds me of an Emblem vault with a little bit of added privacy features. Totally. And instead of just like the Bitcoin inside of the encrypted wallet, it'd be like a claim on the Bitcoin that you can then retrieve from a mixer. So it's kind of like a masked privacy focused Emblem vault, which I think is pretty cool.
Yep. That is pretty cool. Dax, you back?
No, we might need you to take another lap.
you might have to shut your phone down and come back in, man. This is my experience always, man. Devs have the worst tech, bro.
Yeah, we got some We'll get back to crypto. Another thing that I thought that is interesting is Solana is objectively like the least cypherpunk chain in terms of like the crypto industry. But if you look closely, it's brought more people on chain than Bitcoin and Ethereum combined, probably, at least in the last couple of years. It's probably like the most close vision to peer-to-peer digital cash, as it is cash at the speed of light. And then if we get privacy on Solana more so than Bitcoin and Ethereum, it actually ends up becoming the most cypherpunk chain, which is kind of like Elon's like most entertaining outcome is the outcome. And so I don't know. It's just it's interesting to see. There was so much innovation in peer-to-peer cash and digital privacy, and it just kind of fell off of a cliff somewhere in the realm of like 2012 or 2013, maybe 2014. And it's just kind of interesting that there hasn't been much innovation since. So I'm always like really empathetic, and I really love to see when more teams are trying it, because it was so prevalent in the early days of the internet, but then for some reason when it finally had its chance to blossom, it all disappeared. And it doesn't really make sense because it was always attacked by governments globally. So I don't think that there was anything new in terms of pressure, but I don't know, maybe they all just got super rich from being early crypto pioneers that they just didn't want to do anything else.
Tends to be the case. Dax, we have you back? No, I see him on mute. He's still on mute, so
he's off mute.
His mic is. Oh, maybe not.
What about if we got him on the live stream?
So, well, I know that. I mean, you know the way this works. It's like sometimes you have to like literally restart your phone. It's so crazy.
This was such a fun convo. It sucks to lose him like this.
But it is. I mean, we all know over the last 4 years, the entire industry has moved away from that crypto ethos, right? And I think it's coming back to some degree. I mean, we've even had on, I don't know, a couple different guys, talking about privacy, talking about these ethos. But I mean, realistically, on my timeline, I follow like 5 guys who are really, really, really into it, right? There's just like a handful. It's just not many. And so, yeah, I always like to support people who are kind of pushing forward. What's up, Dave? You up? Bro, Dave's rugged too.
Maybe it's us. Maybe
our space is rugged for him.
No, go ahead, Dave.
Maybe
we're rugged.
Bro, can anybody hear us in the audience? Can you guys hear us? Raise your hands or make a sound. Oh, bro, are we totally rugged? We're totally fucking rugged. Holy shit! It's us, bro.
I know Dave can hear us.
Dave can hear us.
Okay.
I still gave us a thumbs up. All right, it's not us.
We've just rugged. All the speakers are rugged.
Oh, you remember in 2017, dude, there was tons of privacy-focused ICOs and coins, right? There was like Grin, Beam was one of them. Obviously, you had Monero, Zcash came out then. There was and then Mimblewimble was like starting to make its like early waves or conversation into kind of just the overall privacy. Mimblewimble, man. Honestly, from what I hear, it's one of the better privacy technologies. It's just a bitch to figure out.
It was extremely like at the forefront for a long time. I would feel more comfortable investing, quote unquote, in privacy now. But the thesis was that it was always like a cash, like a, you spend most of your savings in investments and not necessarily in cash. And if you ever want to transact privately, you would just hop into a privacy coin. So it was like the investment thesis was hard for me, especially because governments were always like never going to let that happen, especially. And so like investing in something like Monero or investing in Zcash was always like a hard no for me. But these days, I think that with like the new kind of reliving of privacy focused tech and how governments are kind of approaching crypto, I would maybe give it a second thought, but it was always a tough investment for me.
Totally agree, man. Totally agree. I think it's and that's one of the reasons I think it doesn't really get much traction on crypto Twitter, right? The last one I know that was something like this that Dax is building was probably like 2 years ago. A guy was trying to do this on Ethereum and did a kind of a token raise, but it kind of just faded away, kind of thing. Similar thing. I think Dax has an opportunity here to create through like, the token itself, create this interest wheel that could bring it to the next level, which is like, kind of the unique prop of a meme coin to sit on top of the technology and actually drive interest. And then if it's needed for the technology, could create something interesting. And give it that attention, which is really difficult to maintain.
So what I'm hearing is that we can't hear anybody else on the stage, but they can hear us from somebody who just messaged me. I'll see if I could get Dax here on the live stream so we can finish this up. But go ahead, continue.
It is just kind of interesting to see, where all the privacy devs went. They were, I mean, think of like the early industry pioneers. It was like extremely privacy focused. It was mostly privacy focused. It was focused on like digital sovereignty and how do we recreate cash in the digital form. Well, somewhere over the last 10 years,
bro, that shit's fucking gone. It's so far gone.
But it existed for 40 years in the early days of the internet, and somehow it went to zero.
Dude, it's literally went to zero. Literally.
Well, Dax is joining our live stream, so everyone give it a few minutes. He'll be on.
Awesome.
Cool.
I mean, literally. I mean, obviously, we have people. Whatever. We have Dash out there. We have a couple of these tokens. We're kind of still pushing for it. But even to be fair, like I talked to those guys and they were, talking to them about maybe, hey, what would it be like to do like, leaving kind of traditional banking and going all in on Dash and stuff. But for like me as a creator, I actually don't even want to do that because it's like, I know that if I become like, I'm going to go off the grid to like and only transact in freedom technology, bro, it's like, hello, US government. You just know you're making yourself a target, right? And it's just like, I don't even know. It's so, you really have to be so like, I don't know, kind of brave to do stuff like that in a way.
That's good.
I am so sorry. I think you'll laugh at me,
yes,
but I also own my own IXP exchange, Internet Protocol Exchange. So I have my own personal IPv6 allocation. Everything in my network runs IPv6. So that's the only thing I can think of that's doing this because I rejoined on my laptop.
No, nobody knows what IPv6 is, bro.
Right? Well, no, I joined on my phone. I joined on my laptop. I reboot my massive work rig, and nothing lets me rejoin. And I'm like, this is
welcome
great.
to crypto.
Never, baby.
Twitter, man. Twitter,
right?
Twitter is always the pain. But
well, it's not Twitter. It actually used to be Periscope. So this is a little bit insider knowledge, but Twitter bought Periscope, and even their existing infrastructure until last 6 months, 12 months
was still running.
Was still Periscope.
That's crazy.
The early days of Periscope were insane. There were some crazy live streams.
My wife blew up on Periscope like day one. It was crazy back in the day.
It was good to have you back, Dax. Nice to meet you.
So to continue the conversation to where we were talking about migrating to new brand to Zera Labs. Is there any meaning behind the name Zera, or just the overall intention of migrating and rebranding?
Yeah,
and the move behind it.
So we're introducing a new era of zero knowledge, Zera, Z-E-R-A, zero with an A. So a new era of zero knowledge. And it's really pushing the research and development side of things. If I had my way, we would make a bunch of money from this, continue to make money from the trading fees and what have you, and use that to do nothing but hire PhDs and hire world-class developers to build meaningful privacy technologies, both at the enterprise and the personal level. So more V1 mixer. I even have plans in the notion for years down the line, a full L2 rollup that's entirely private based on zero knowledge proofs. Like all of this stuff can be enabled and can be privacy by default, but it can also be compliance ready. That's the other thing that like people are scared of, and I get it. It is terrifying, the fact that there is no de minimis exception for what they've charged Tornado Cash with or stuff like that. So the moment you go live on main chain, you're immediately responsible for those funds as a money transmitting business, or take the chance of being classified as a money transmitting business. I don't think that's anything that anyone wants, because that immediately triggers your customer and AMCL or AML and all that other stuff. And it's like, let's take a break. Let's pump the brakes. Let's figure this out. A smart way to do this. And so by leveraging what Solana has already done with token extensions and compliance-ready privacy, we can do that and still, stick our nose up at the government and go, we're going to do private cash. We're going to do private transactions. And if you want to participate in this network, you should have already got on a while ago. But the other thing that kind of ties into the UX UI of this is I am hoping that by releasing early, often, and building, especially over these next 4 years, I think we talked about it, like, the gloves are off for the next 4 years. Whether you like the current political climate or not, for crypto, it's put your head down and build as fast as you physically can.
100%.
Yeah. And so my goal, hopefully, is that in the ideal world, this takes off like iMessage. With the early days of iMessage, regulators wanted a backdoor into it. They wanted access to all of Apple's chats and everything else, but it blew up so quickly, so fast that all the politicians were already on iMessage, and Apple could go, you really want to give your constituents or your political adversary backdoor access to all of your chats because you're already on iMessage. And so building out that kind of UX UI sticky environment that's meaningful to users, I think it's going to be a really powerful tool, like I said, to abstract away the complicated, scary math, but also just to make it feel easy, privacy by default.
You mentioned that you're going to be adding different types of token extensions to the new token Zera. What type of additional functionality can be embedded into this new token that you don't typically see with like meme coin tradings that are trading on an SPL standard?
Yeah, would be the permanent token fee. The confidential transfers is probably the biggest one. I'm a sucker for anything that lets me do less work. And so for me, the biggest one is confidential transfers, along with some of the interface tweaks. I think just make it easier for integrating zero knowledge proofs and ownership of those tokens, just a lot easier. And most of this stuff, like even the DevNet that I pushed last night, it did have the extensions that I needed enabled, but I hadn't enabled private transfers yet. But if you even look at the tokenomics of what I pushed out last night and the stuff, you'll notice that there, regardless of the 11 or 12 wallets that I moved money around left, right, and center with, there's no linkability, there's no same price transactions. All of that, basic mixer behavior has been covered. And the really cool thing is it was done with commitments. I can actually probably show you. I have a file of every commitment that occurred. It got handed off from one JavaScript thread to another and then pushed back up to the chain, and it actually did the validation and the proof. And so being able to go through that in my records, making sure that, hey, did I break something? Did I do math wrong? And all those pieces are really important to good development and good UX. And I think it'll also open me up to, okay, as I read more through the documentation and understand more of the ecosystem, because I'm by no means an expert on Solana, I'll be able to see those other opportunities. So I don't think it's only confidential transfers that are going to be important. I think there are a lot of other pieces.
I think even just as you're saying it, like it occurred to me, like, and I know we all, use this just to kind of obfuscate our wallets. Like if we want to buy a meme coin, we're KOLs. We don't want everybody saying, oh, Adam bought the, this shit coin, right? So we'll just I'll use Ghosty Cash just to send to Solana to another wallet of Solana, just so people aren't spying on my wallet when I'm buying some, meme coin. Is that like a really simple use case here where just
Definitely.
oh, if I want to just hide, just open a different wallet and not have people know who it is? Like, is that just
Definitely. And that can be its own tab, in the mobile app of I want to seed a fresh wallet. And you can pick those pieces, and you can even pick multiple wallets you want to seed from and multiple wallets you want to seed to, and be able to do that kind of delayed timing and all the things that, if you do really deep chain analysis on things like Tornado Cash, they still suffer from sometimes the entry price and the withdrawals are the same. Sometimes there's time linking, like it immediately went out to this wallet, so you could be fairly certain that it did this. So you can mitigate a lot of that.
XPTs always seem to be able to find whoever uses Tornado Cash. He's able to track it. I don't know how he does it, even over time. He's like, oh, here it is, Yeah, that's cool. So this would totally basically do away with that. This is basically a better version than that.
Yeah, and there's nothing that's going to stop Coinbase or Binance or people like that from going, at some point, this wallet got money from a Mixer-like service. That contract address will always exist on chain. But anything before that Mixer, absolutely perfect. The goal is a perfect privacy firewall. And the moment you hit that Mixer, there's nothing stopping you from moving that to another wallet, keeping it off chain for a while, sending it to a friend, or seeding multiple new wallets. I think for my initial demos, just to maintain manageability and to really push the offline components, I don't see larger transaction volumes than 10, 20 grand being reasonable, especially if our core values and our modality that we're pushing for is mobile and cash-like first. Nobody in their right mind is carrying $20,000 in their wallet.
Oh, you doubt the degens, my friend.
You think there's somebody with $20,000 worth of USD?
Hundreds of thousands of dollars, bro.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, I mean in your physical wallet. No, I mean you went to a bank and
I see what you're saying. No.
$100,000 into an armored bag, and you're walking around with it.
I think it happens more often than we'd like to admit, to be honest. But
fair.
I mean, I feel like you intentionally backed up into like the most powerful fight known to man, private digital cash, and so that's a pretty interesting place to be. One question that I had, one last question, maybe from me. You know, did you have any thoughts on migrating before? Was this kind of like a premeditated thought of something that needed to happen, and then you saw Migrate Fund kind of appear, and you were like, "Well, that's definitely a solution that I was looking for"? Or what were your thoughts when you saw it, and did you kind of had any initial thoughts previous? And then what would maybe a reaction be to some detractors that doesn't really see the need for something like Migrate Fund, or doesn't think that something like that should exist?
Well, my initial reaction was, as this was taken off and I was looking at it, there was the little gremlin in the back of my mind going, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. There's no token 22. There's no confidential transfers.
Right.
Well, I have to re-implement this all from scratch and do like my own privacy layer beforehand with a contract that it hits first to try and anonymize it, and then push it through the mixer and then do the offline math. And I was just honestly relieved that like the community came to me and was like, dude, migrating's fine. It's not the end of the world. It's a fairly common thing. It's a good thing. And oh, by the way, you don't have to learn all the complicated liquidity pool math BS that occurs when creating a pool, or all of Radium's entire API spec to make sure you do this right. These guys, over at Migrate.fun have built this cool product for you. You should sit down with them and chat and figure out if there's product market fit here. And, and there's some features that we've talked about that we want. And like, you guys are getting there. You'll build them. It'll be one of the best, if not the best, one-stop shop for moving liquidity from one set of pools to another. I think that is your end goal, right?
Yep. Exactly. And one cool thing that there's a lot of crossover between our two communities, and so they definitely see it's like a litmus test for people that are investing in like real builders, real projects, and kind of real innovators. So we're super excited to have found out about you. And I mean, I think that a lot of teams that are following Migrate Fund, or a lot of people that are following Migrate Fund, can see that there's like a lot of teams that have real substance, that are really interested in using the platform early on.
Definitely. And I'm very happy. I think you also lucked out too, in that you have a technical product, which means all of your first round users will be able to give you good bug reports.
Dude, you and a handful of teams have been able to provide the majority of the edge cases, I think, that will come to immediately. So it's been awesome. One final question for me actually is surrounding the token. So within Zera, if you're, if the majority of people are transferring stable coins around, or they're trying to obfuscate seeding new wallets so that they could trade meme coins, which I think actually is probably like the primary entry point here, because that's something that happens on thousands of times per day.
Right.
What is the intention and purpose behind the Zera token within the ecosystem?
Mostly funding. Like I said before, that UTXO model or the Merkle chain model, it's really due down to like implementation, if you want to think of it that way, for the offline component of storing the specific commitments. Those kind of go back and forth, but the original model, right, was like Ethereum. I can mint things with an ERC token, 721, or what was the new one, 1129 that they introduced, and it was really sitting there, and I'm like, how do I do this, and how can I sidestep the money transmitter classification? Because if I charge direct fees on this, I'm definitely a money transmitter, and so kind of the burn and the idea of just deflationary tokenomics kind of came into the mind. And I'm like, this could be really doable. And as we've moved forward on it, and I've learned more from lawyers and legal experts that, like, if we're going with compliance-ready encryption in the first place, there's no reason why, especially if I'm not acting as an onboarding or offboarding gate, or even if I am, because that's actually one of the previews. I'll launch something really exciting here with our rebrand and our demo. We're partnered with Stripe, and you will be able to directly buy our token with your credit card in our platform. But guess what? Stripe takes care of the know your customer part, and they will be handling all the identification sides and that kind of a thing, which is really, really cool for us, because that means we can silo off our compliance. Compliance goes here, tokens go here, making money goes here, and providing the best in-class privacy goes here. And they can all work together, but one doesn't have to interfere with the other. And so right now, the token is just kind of our main monetization policy. And as we go forward and find new product avenues and find new privacy avenues, we'll learn to create better monetization strategies, both for the community and for the company itself.
Yeah, I think that's the right path. It's the same thing that we do as well, is make a few decisions and then let the market tell you what they want. And then you start building in that direction until they tell you that's the wrong direction. And then you start going in the other way. Adam, any final questions?
No, I think I got it. I guess you haven't announced the full tokenomics yet, have you? Is that going to be coming?
We've announced a model that we think would work pretty well on the old documentation, but all of kind of the new stuff, what the governance model will be, how much time is spent in developing or even creating a DAO, all that information is going to come out with post-migration, with the fresh launch of the website, because I'm really trying to pair the migration with that first round demo, because degens need buttons to press. Totally. And I've said this in my community a bunch of times. I can do the math, I can do the proofs, I can even release. I even released a really funny AI SDK that reverse engineers Solana addresses just as a proof of concept. Not a single person in my community was able to download or run it, and I'm just like, so degens need buttons, and so our real bottleneck to speed and mobility right now is capital, to hire the designers that we need to build the designs so that we can implement them quickly. Because like I said, making privacy default, it's easier. If we make privacy easier, just like Signal somehow did privacy and made it easier than texting, and now I default to that. That's the same thing with human nature. So that's kind of the end goal and the big bottleneck here is raise capital, hire designers, hire good engineers to turn those designs, both from the math side and the UX UI side, into quality products.
Very cool. It's one. Well, I think you were kind of fiddling, trying to get your tech to work there, get back on the show. But one thing I was saying to recommend, is if for either other teams or even for your own native token, is this idea of if you want people to actually use the app or whatever you create, you just make it an airdrop tool, right? It's like, oh, you want to get some of the token, here you go. You have to, basically download this and you'll be airdrop some token, right?
So part of that, going through closed beta and the difference between an open and a closed beta and what that means for our classification as a money transmitting business. The demo, if we do a pre-release before migration, it will absolutely be token gated. And Vercel has had a really great token gated content demo out for 5 years now. And the fact that it's not leveraged more, and that we have these just vanilla web-based tools that exist that apply pressure towards better monetization policies and towards onboarding people into a token system. And the fact that we don't use them is a tragedy, honestly, because these tools exist. they're proven, and they're open source, and we can implement them within 2 days of engineering.
Well, man, Dax, your experience in the crypto space shows, as you worked at MetaMask and Foundry, and now here on your own project on Solana. It's cool to see you going cross-chain and using all of the resources that are available to then build out this cool vision. So I appreciate it. I'm excited to work with you on Migrate Fund and to continue to network and grow both of our businesses as time goes on. So appreciate you and your time, and also your community for showing up. It's a very focused show with a lot of visitors on the live stream and as well as on Spaces. So there's a lot of interest around this. So you have a big job on your hands.
I appreciate that, and I do want to thank you, your community, and my community. I think because of the way that we launched in Pump Fund and the narrative, like this was my PhD thesis, has been the long haul. I don't think I've had any really sour experiences with anybody in your community or my community, and they have always been, this is the long haul. We're going to figure out if the math even works for the first 3 months. And they were fine with me working on latex papers, you know? And so just being here, you building a quality community as well is just remarkable. And I applaud you for that, because that's one of the hardest things to do, right?
Long-term vision, man. You know, it's tough sometimes when the meta is short-term attention span, but if you're here for the long haul, you know, whether you're on different chains, the vision stays clear to build something monumental. So appreciate everyone for joining us today. We'll be back Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific time. Until then, stay safe out there. Make sure that you're following the Zera Labs account and Dax, and we'll see you guys soon.
Thanks, guys.
Later.